ongerechtvaardigde vooronderstellingen. Als er één ongerechtvaardigde mythe is, waardoor Stephen Toulmin, geholpen door zijn vader en later Wittgenstein, in de loop van zijn leven gefascineerd zal raken, dan is het de mythe van de rationaliteit en het materialisme. De mythe die eeuwen geleden alweer werd gegrondvest door mensen als René Descartes en die de grondslag zou vormen voor de moderne wereld. Die moderne wereld mag zijn vastgelopen. Toch, schrijft Toulmin, is de droom van Descartes en de zijne blijkbaar nog steeds actueel voor veel mensen. Het is hun absolute toewijding aan de rationaliteit die ooit intellectuele zekerheid en harmonie beloofde, die hen nog steeds doet vertrouwen op industrie en wetenschap. Het is de wereld waarin de natuur, de beesten, het universum, heel het schouwspel rondom ons, wordt gezien als onbewuste materie. Alleen wij, de mensen, hebben een uniek ding, de bewuste geest. Met die geest zullen we tenslotte de wereld om ons heen en onszelf begrijpen. Die mythe van Descartes en de zijne fascineert Toulmin al decennia, zoals die andere mythe uit de tijd van Descartes. Dat ons bewustzijn een ding in ons hoofd is. Dat het binnen in onze schedel wordt gevormd, in plaats van door de wereld buiten.
What he convinced people of was the idea that if only we pursued some kind of abstract rational method, we would be able to find general recipes for getting ourselves out of these difficulties. Or this was what they carried away. Descartes was quite a subtle, of course he was a subtle man, and if you look at what he says, it's clear that his personal ambitions were much more qualified and much better understood than those of his followers. But the general impression people carried away was that there was this art of being rational, which was going to be the going to provide us with general procedures for solving not only intellectual problems, but also, as time went on, people thought technical problems and practical problems as well. And I think that's the idea that there are some kind of general intellectual recipes for dealing with problems. What, when I was a young man, was called the scientific method.
And very seductive.
Very seductive. No, very seductive, and especially for people who see the world falling apart around them.
Yes. What were the main, if you look back, and you should, in one page, for instance, describe what were the illusions of the Cartesian theater and what were finally the big mistakes and failures? What kind of metaphor comes to your mind? What kind of...
Well, I'll tell you a metaphor that comes to my mind. I had a student working with me who wrote a very interesting paper for me. It was about the transition from the apron stage to the proscenium stage, which takes place at precisely this time, precisely between 1600 and 1640. Shakespeare worked with an apron stage. When you saw a Shakespearean play, what you did was to see a slice of life which was going on among you. The audience was all there, and this slice of life was going on just there. In the proscenium stage, there is a curtain, and at a certain point the curtain is drawn apart, and you are revealed a mysterious set of things going on in a world apart from you. And I think I think that many of our images of the mind, again, are images which are closely associated with this proscenium idea. Everybody is, so to say, everybody presents a kind of stage face to us. And, what is going on in his mind is like what is going on behind the curtains of the proscenium stage. We no longer feel that the things that go on within us all are part of a public era, a part of a public activity. So, I mean, if this seems to me to be, so to say, a key intellectual transition, it's in that John Donne poem, which I so enjoy quoting, where he says, 'Tis all in pieces, all coherence gone, all just supply and all relation. Prince, subject, father, son, 'tis all forgot, and every man alone thinks he hath got to be a phoenix, and that there can be none of that kind of which he is but he. It was a curious kind of narcissism, a view of every individual as creating his own mind and personality from scratch in his own lifetime. None of this sense that we are the inheritors and transmitters of traditions, that our world is shaped for us by the things that we grow up into and which we internalize and make our own. That's what I think we're recapturing now, and in, so to say, a pragmatist rather than a pragmatist rather than a Cartesian world. I think it makes much more sense to see language and thought that way. And I think one of the main traps was indeed this Cartesian trap of thinking that the world begins in the mind of René Descartes and in the minds of all the other individuals to whom God has kindly given clear and distinct ideas. And to that extent, Wittgenstein brings us back out of the proscenium stage onto the apron stage, where we live surrounded by the rest of the world and act out the episodes of our lives in this public domain. From time to time, stopping to think to ourselves, stopping to say something to ourselves under our breath, stopping to wonder what to say without yet saying it, doing all the things we've learned to internalize, but basically doing them as part of a public world, not as part of a kind of narcissistic rehearsal behind the curtain.
Lissabon, een zondagmiddag in het voorjaar. De wetenschap van Descartes en Newton heeft het lang volgehouden, bijna 3 eeuwen. Voorspelbaarheid, zekerheid, ordening. We zouden de onbewuste wereld rondom ons via ons welbewuste, rationele bewustzijn tenslotte geheel begrijpen. Ja, als we maar genoeg elektroden op elkaars hoofd zetten, zouden we ook nog eens begrijpen hoe ons eigen bewustzijn precies werkt. De wereld als één groot mechanistisch gedoe. Ordening. Voorspelbaarheid. Zekerheid.